Let me see. Let me see.
We're live.
How do I get his voice on?
He's working on it. Just keep
Okay, great. So we're working on. Hello, we are speaking with Philippe Frank from Brussels, Belgium. He's on the telephone, and hopefully shortly we'll have him on the screen with us so we can see his ominous presence and he can co-host the show as planned. Philippe, could you tell me what you had planned to tell the public, and I will take it from your voice to this microphone. Just a minute. Let me put the speaker on, and you can tell them. Hang on. Okay.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead, Philippe.
I'm on the air? Okay.
You are on the air.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. I'm Philippe Frank, talking from Belgium, Europe. I'm really glad to be here on the air with you on the invitation of my friend Biba Sheikh. And I'm the director of Transculture, which is a center of digital cultures and sound cultures based in Belgium, and also of a network for contemporary arts called European Pépinière of Creation. I'm also a sound and intermedia artist and teacher and author. So I'm a trans guy.
So what kind of, let's start with, you said digital sound arts, trans cultures. What kind of projects do you do?
Excuse me, what kind of?
What kind of projects and events? What is your mission? What kind of, what have you been doing with this foundation?
Well, so Transculture is an interdisciplinary center which I founded in 1996 in Brussels to promote and develop exchanges and collaborations between various artists, but also disciplines. And for us, digital or media art or intermedia arts are a good way to meet and to cross various disciplines, various approaches, various artists, various projects. So we have really this transversal intermedia approach from the very beginning. And it's the same for sound. Sound for me somehow is, sound art is somehow beyond music. I have nothing against music. I'm also a musician and we promote musicians, but sound art is working sound, the textures of sound, and sound also in space, and not only in time, as it is more with music, generally speaking.
And what do you mean,
And
sound
so,
in space and not in time?
excuse me?
What do you mean by sound in space, not only in time, as in music usually?
I mean, I'm talking, for example, about installations, sound installations.
I see.
And sound installations or new forms of sound devices, or also intermedia and sound performances, which we try to promote and to produce with artists who work with the urban space and the city, the sound of the cities, but also the context. So it's very site-specific work, and we have an international sound art festival called City Sonic, which I founded in 2003, and it's in Belgium in various cities. And for 2 or 3 weeks, you have like 100 international artists proposing new works in locations of this city, outdoor or indoor, and they can be collaborative work, interactive work, or not interactive work, high-tech work or low-tech work.
Yeah.
Povera,
Why don't you give us?
So we try to cross various styles of sound art. There is not one sound art. There is not one digital art to me.
And could you, because I know the festival also, because I did work on the program with some translation and editing, and I'd like to, if you could share with the public an example of one of the installations, so we really have an idea of the uniqueness and the sensitivity and the technology involved in and what kind of spaces and what kind of concepts are being applied.
Well, as I said, so they are very diverse, but as the last edition of Citizenic, there is this Portuguese artist called Natalia de Melo, as we are in the Mediterranean fire sphere with your show, and she was in residency in a center which hosted migrants and in the University of Louvain-la-Neuve near Brussels for some weeks. And then she worked with them, with the dances, with the traditional music background, with the also modern music they like. And she made some kind of compositions with 15 different migrants from different nationalities, African, from the Middle East too, and so they all participate to this composition, which migrants. Was also video installation and interactive sound installation in this very center.
And what do you mean interactive sound? I'm just trying to bring this down to earth, because I think with the cultural differences, we're not used to listening to these kind of projects. So what do you mean by interactive in this sense?
Well, interactive is like is the viewer or the visitor is part of the work, so you can interact with the sounds, with depending on the move. Is our movement, the position in the space, sometimes the weight, sometimes the voice, and so you can interact really with the work. But I don't promote interaction for interaction's sake. I think there is now some kind of dictatorship of interaction. Everything has to be interactive. Everything has to be innovative. That's the kind of new techno-marketing language which I don't like. If it is participative, if it is really useful for the purpose of the work and the relationship with the visitors and the participants, then of course it can be interesting. If it's only a game, it's not interesting. Okay, and let's talk about when the lockdown, the coronavirus lockdown poured all over the world. What took place with your strategies, with your artistic projects, festivals, with your thoughts on art in relation to this, and how did you act upon it? Yes, of course, as with Transcultures and also with the network of European Pépinière of Creation, which is more international, not only in France or in Belgium, but linking like 30 countries. We had to position ourselves differently, because when we organize physical residencies, an exchange of artists between, for example, Canada and Belgium or France and Africa, then of course it wasn't that easy. We from March 2020. So we have launched this program called No Lockdown Art, which is actually an online program, and then we launched some call for proposals towards international artists from all over the world, from different disciplines, not only sound or digital, but also performing arts, for example, or poetry. And then we have received in 2 weeks we have received like 500 projects.
Really?
So it was quite huge. We couldn't support them all, of course, and some of them were quite good. Some of them were, let's say, nice, but maybe not that relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we chose to promote like 100 projects. Which we shown online
Mm-hmm.
on our website, but also we made a Facebook group for the artists and the projects to have some exchange with not only between them but with
Mm-hmm.
other professionals, with other viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And then from this web virtual dimension, we went to a more concrete, real, physical dimensions, because some of these projects found also opportunities in various festivals or events, thanks to that.
Okay,
And
wait,
could develop
you know what?
the
First of all,
partners.
we're going to go on, but I want to tell the public exactly who we are and where we are because it's very important. You are listening to WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. It is an extension of WJZZ Radio, which is the oldest jazz radio station in the world. And you can find us live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and we encourage you to please like, support, share, and comment anything that's on your mind. We would love to share and respond to. So thank you for being here. Our guest today, in case you came on just now, is Philippe Frank, who is the founder and director of the Transcultures Digital and Sonic Arts Foundation, and another entity that is called Pépinière de Création, which means it's kind of like the uh, it's kind of that place where pépinière. How would you translate it into English?
Well, it's difficult to translate, but I would say that it's a nomadic center for emerging and young artists to meet and to exchange and to make them discover to various audiences in various countries.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking right now about his projects that were related to the lockdown. Let's start talking about
No lockdown art.
called No Lockdown Art. And I have been in contact with Philippe Frank since the 90s, actually, he was actually there during my first bridge over to the Mediterranean, and during, when I went to spend time in post-war Beirut, and I did some projects there also with Transcultures when they were just first starting out. And then here we are today, many years later. Why don't we just talk about now what came out of the No Lockdown project from the Detroit end, where I am. By the way, Philippe, you are right now, we are in a building that has a very historical energy and context, and that people that work here also are related to the history of music in Detroit in a very strong way. So it's a very special place, and we're very glad to have you with us today, and hopefully we can do a series together, and will be able to see you on the screen and bring in some of your artists for interviews and projects in Detroit.
With pleasure.
We will now let's talk about in the No Lockdown project, what started in the poetry section. I had received a message about this No Lockdown project, and I proposed an artistic project, and it was also very welcome by Philippe Frank, which is to just keep a diary during the lockdown, actually. So I come from a background of poetry and writing, as well as theater and all this kind of stuff. So during the lockdown, it was just to keep a diary. of what was happening around me, and any, thoughts mixing in with memories, and flashes of different things that had happened in different countries, and it kind of all mixed together in Detroit. And it was then the book came out of it, which was accepted by a Detroit publisher, that's going to be published on April 30th. And it's called Akashic Diaries, Detroit Degree Zero, and Other Crisis Writings. And Philippe Frank has written the introduction to the book. And I think we can start with after the book. Then we also took some of the pieces, and Philippe, from what he's developed musically in his own musical work, merged with the writing of Akashic Diaries. So we do have some narrations with music of Philippe Frank, which we're going to play for you also. But Philippe, why don't we talk about? I really like the introduction, and why don't you give us kind of a summarized version, because it's very interesting information, and I think people would like to hear it.
You're talking about the introduction of your future book, Akashic Diaries, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe it's interesting to put that in context.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, there is this global no lockdown art initiative that we launched, and as part of this initiative, we have launched like a sub program, which is called in French correspondance confinée, like
Confined
correspondences.
Mm-hmm.
And in this more poetic exchange program, we ask several authors from various countries, Belgium, France, also Russia, United States, Canada, and so on, to write some kind of diary, but not the usual diary of what eat, what they read, and how they sleep well or not, but how this specific period, which is quite blemish and grey, and it's a total dictation, how this context can influence or not, but mostly it is quite influential, their work, and how they react to this mutation, pandemic mutation, but also more global ecological crisis and economic, I hope, mutation towards people less rich and poor people less poor, which so far is not the case. So how they react to that, and how does it affect also their art and their writing. So then I made some introduction to your text, which is actually, there are two parts in the book, three parts. One is the Akashic Diaries that you wrote on our invitation. I think it was in April, but like 2 months max.
Yes.
And then also there is this other great text that you wrote, Detroit Degree Zero. And then at the end there are some older texts, poetic texts, which actually goes back to when we met. It was somehow between Berlin, Beirut, and Brussels.
Yes.
And I remember quite well the video that we made together with the late video artist Hansel and Gretel, a French, very good French artist. His real name was Daniel Mongeon. And you made the text called Biba non Biba, and I made the music as Paradise Now, which is my nickname as a sound artist. And this video was quite successful in shown in many international video festivals, and still now. And so from that magic exchange and collaboration, which was also some kind of crisis like the civil war
Mm-hmm.
in Beirut, the reunification, the difficulties of
Yeah,
the reunification with the
that's what
two
I lived when
parts
I
of
was in
Germany.
contact with Philippe. In the 90s. I had gone from Berlin. I was in Paris first, and I was studying theater in Paris. And then I went to continue that in Berlin. And as soon as I moved to Berlin, like 3 months later, the Berlin Wall fell and communism ended. So I remember it being a feeling of like I'm moving to a place, and the place I'm moving to is now changing completely. And it was a huge silence, this revolution that nobody was expecting. It was like people just woke up one morning, and the Berlin Wall that separated the people from the east side and the people from the west side was down, and people could cross to each side and see, people that they haven't seen in 30 years. And then in the same exact year, the 17-year civil war in Beirut, Lebanon, the country of Lebanon, ended suddenly in the same year. So communism ended, and which prompted the ending of the Lebanese civil war. And then right after that, the first Iraqi war with America started. So they had to end this war in order to begin the other war. And I was traveling between Berlin and Beirut, which were both two divided cities that were under unification. And we did this project together with Philippe Frank and Transcultures of images of Berlin and Beirut, these two divided cities under reconstruction. There was images of destruction and construction superimposed on top of each other, the music of Philippe Frank, and the images of Danielle Mongeon, who was working with Philippe under the name Hansel and Gretel. And yeah, that was that. I think I'm talking about this because I think this time period has influenced my work more than any other time. It really, after studying and gaining all these techniques, and I remember saying when I was younger, like if somebody would ask me what I wanted to do, I would say that I wanted to write a play about Lebanon, which when I was much younger was seemed to be a very ambitious project, because it was under civil war, and even I had never lived there. So, but I did go. It was a very subconscious way of doing it that I did go there. I had been doing a lot of voice work as well, and I saw that in my own voice, as I was letting my voice out, there would be something like Arabic in my voice, and that also kind of sparked my interest to go to Lebanon. And I had been reading a lot of books about Arabic history and culture. So I did end up in Beirut. I have family there, and it was post-war is always a very time of high energy. People coming together, congregating. Theaters are opening. After 17 years of war. People now have their dreams back again. They have a chance. They're not just going to throw their lives away. The whole society was there was no law, there was no, so they had to reestablish how a society functions. And that's, I learned that there too, how laws are established, how a city functions, how it's organized. So I went through all of that, and I think once it was all reconstructed, I didn't have any interest to stay there anymore. I was just there for this process, which I was talking about, which is called a post-war revolution. That is like it. I remember Bertolt Brecht also went to Berlin right after the war there. He was not originally from Germany, and he developed his theater work there. So I also had that in mind. I also know that the main voice work in theater is also coming from somebody who also was fighting as a soldier, and the voices of those fighters in moments, extreme moments, were kind of were living within him, and his own experiences that he was bringing out in his voice were bringing out sounds that were very, very, very out of the ordinary, and it's kind of that sound of or feeling of like suddenly if a mother has to save her baby, that strength, that will, that other power that's within her suddenly awakens, a dormant power. And I think a lot of the voice work was based on that. And I had done a lot of voice work in Lebanon with young people who were in the war. And so I was very interested in pursuing that kind of content and research and all of that. So anyway, Philippe Frank was always in contact with me during that bridge period between Europe and the Mediterranean. And so what are we going to do now, Philippe? You're my co-host, even though we can't have you on the screen. You are listening to you are watching WJZZ Cool TV. You
Maybe it
can.
would be nice to have some sound, some music, if it's
Okay.
possible.
Yes, sir. Which one should I play?
Well, maybe you have a piece with our good friend poet Ira Cohen, which is also a link between us. The late New York poet and nomadic poet Ira Cohen, photographer.
Oh yes, you want me to play Ira Cohen?
Yeah, I think I send you some
pieces. Okay, I'm gonna play it. Yes.
Okay, please, and then we can comment
later
after the piece.
For Yamaguchi Kanjiro, even the king of the Ginza must sometimes sleep. Without light and shadow, there is no reality. I would invite you to stay with me, but my room is so narrow, she said. Her dream is to sing Rambo's Drunken Boat in Japanese. Aranobu faces like peeled almonds, hands held in place, ready for flight. Polka dots on everything. Design is divine. I look in the mirror and see your face, Japanese clipper on the cormorant. The rose of my skull opens in the revolving sushi bar of bearded dreams. Elevator girls in blue and white uniforms sing out the floors on the way to heaven. Black veils and yellow thighs striped with live garters hanging loose in the Tokyo night of surgical masks and sour soybean paste. Young girls without underpants walk on mirrored floors while businessmen consummate big deals at drunken tables. Pickled grasshoppers have a lovely bouquet. A dog licks my memory away. The golden belt encircles the town, and the mere thought of an uneaten peach makes me come in my pants. Even the king of the Ginza must sometimes sleep. Tokyo Birdhouse for Kazuko Shiraishi. It all started with Kazuko saying, "I want to invite you to my birdhouse." Then I discovered that stamp with her picture on it, the pink leadbeater cockatoo with 7 pointed white crest, sharp little beak, red-rimmed eyes, and white wings, sitting in a tree in Okusi Ambino. I knew that I was the brown owl from Cape Verde, doomed to be up all night, longing for live meat like the wounded owl I once force-fed every day in Kathmandu. Then I couldn't get the birds out of my head. I remembered how writing evolved from the flight of cranes, the calligraphical formations, the bird tracks in the sand, Palamedes and Valmiki. Then Attar's colloquy of the birds started by confounding me. I too wanted to fly into the center of the sun. Then there was the magical kingfisher of my childhood, the crow who flew with burning wick in its beak in order to describe Dharma. That Pondicherry bird of South India, calling all night, "I've got a fever, I've got a fever." The fever bird, we called it. I remembered the feather floating to the ground, the brilliant plumage, Quetzalcoatl, your triple-eyed peacock feather given to an emperor of China by the king of Nepal. This is not a poem, but a pastiche of swallows and toucans, a hymn to flight, a tenderness for pigeons. Your woodpecker which lets spirits escape from trees, big birds which can't fly, to the face hidden beneath every wing, to the falcon's lure, to the blinded birds, lyre birds, birds which are good to eat, parrots and magpies, the whip-poor-will, the egg of sleep. I want to invite you to my birdhouse, you said.
You are also watching, I'm sorry, I keep saying listening to WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest TV in the world. You can catch us live on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. And thank you for being with us. Our guest today is Philippe Frank from the Transcultures, the Digital Arts and Sonic Arts Foundation, and the Pépinière de Création, which is a multinational foundation for promoting the arts in different countries and especially young artists. He's our co-host today.
Hello again. So we were listening to a great piece by our common friend, late friend, unfortunately, Biba. Ira Cohen, who was an American New York poet, photographer, filmmaker, publisher, mythographer, and Ira is for me, and I think for you also, was a big influence. And as he was first a great poet, also a great eye of photography. He made those famous pictures, the Myler pictures in the 60s with William Burroughs, Jimi Hendrix, Spirit, John McLaughlin, and other great musicians or writers. And this piece, sometimes even the king of Ginza Can Sleep and Tokyo Birdhouse, was taken from a CD produced by Brussels, very interesting Brussels label, indie label called Sub Rosa, which we work with a lot. The CD is called The Majun Traveler, and the music was made by an Algerian experimental DJ called Shep Isaba, living in California at the time. And it also included the work of a famous jazz musician as Don Cherry or Ornette Coleman, which Ira knew quite well. And I think it's really nice to hear his deep voice again, and this particular moment and particular crisis. I reckon was part of the very first event organized by Transcultures in Brussels at the end of 1995, and also Biba, your the video you participated to, the video of Ansel and Gretel, which I made the music for, called Biba and Biba, was also part of this interdisciplinary Akashic weekend, as it was called, already Akashic at the time. Maybe we can explain what Akashic means, because Akashic is from the Sanskrit Akash, meaning towards the shining manifestation, sky speech, the hidden meaning, the psychic keep, the unwritten history of mankind, past, present, and future, God's book of remembrance, the universal radio, the subliminal cassette, the cloud doctrine, diaries of the radar, the space in which enlightenment is born, and the Buddha's womb. I guess it's a nice program, don't you think?
Yes. The best, I think.
And then we chose together the title of your future book is also Akashic Diary. So it means that it's not I think everybody can understand that it's not the usual diary, but more
it's what connects everything together. It's a connecting force somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this connecting energy and connected creation that you're talking about is very much at the core of our transcultures and also European Pepiniere project, but also your artistic path and also spiritual engaged path too.
Mm-hmm.
From the time we met in Brussels in the mid 90s and when this video was made,
Mm-hmm.
up to what you did in Beirut as a theater director, singer, performer, and then Spain, and then now in Detroit, and then we I'm really happy that this book, which somehow summarizes this transversal and engaged and trans-poetic approach, is going to come out in published by Aquarius Press in Detroit, which is a very interesting publisher, open to the minorities' voices and to contemporary poetry, and with high quality, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And back to this introduction and context, I just wanted to point out in this introduction that somehow there is a line between this crisis that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
also including the acts of racism, xenophobia, and violent discrimination that you've been knowing in the United States, but we also know that in Europe and around the world, unfortunately. Also the reaction of our leaders, which is most of the time quite disappointing. The need for change, for real change, and not only a shallow change, really a change of economy, a change of approach to the planet, because we're part of the planet and we are killing our own house,
Mm-hmm.
which is a global house now.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this is quite urgent, incandescent, as I said in the introduction. And I think that you made a vibrant call for more light in our increasingly dark techno planet and new kind of Middle Ages, as the French philosopher Edgar Morin said. We live in a global Middle Ages,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to cope with it. And it's not always bad. There are good things also in globality, but it involves also a radical criticism of that. All that suffocates desire and stifles the singularities, as I wrote, and differences which constitute the essence of our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, for you, also for the publisher and for Transcultures, European Pepiniere, and I hope for some other singular voices, this kind of approach is really urgent and important now. I'm really excited about sharing that, not only with the text, also with the sound and with intermedia approach.
Mm-hmm. What should we play now that's coming from Akashic Diaries? Maybe the flashes of violence?
It would be nice to play some one of the pieces that we made together.
Maybe the one that comes from Detroit Degree Zero.
Excuse me?
The one that came from Detroit Degree Zero, the flashes of violence?
Yes, which is actually the most recent one. So you sent me this great excerpt of your text, Detroit Degree Zero, which is going to be part of the book. And then I chose in this piece not to use technology, electronic treatments, or even guitar or voice, which I do. Most of the time I mix all that, but to play with contemporary piano pieces and to make a special composition for you, which is actually, I think, because I think your text is quite profound and somehow dark, because we live in dark times.
Mm-hmm.
But we all search the light.
Mm-hmm.
And,
this
common friend said, the light at the end of the tunnel is not always the train running to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
okay.
that would be nice to hear to this text with Paradise Now music.
Okay, and I'd just like to say that it is on the darker side because it's actually this particular text, half of it is situated inside of a prison. So usually within the text, this what we're about to hear in the written text is situated as what the inmates have to view on the television screen in the corridor. I just thought I'd say that because just because it might be handy to know that. Okay, I'm going to play it. Flashes of violence from the past, of putting him in the dryer, of servicemen with shoelaces tied together, belts tightened, bent at the waist, being walked like a dog, crushed the flagpole into his toes. Flashes of pretending to protect innocence, removing them. The world feels useless, the people powerless, souls of hunger, embargoes, destruction of noble ancient cultures, so many sacrifices. The corridor screen shows 4 seconds of Seattle, tear gas scattered crowds, a seemingly ex-fighter enticed at riots, falling into a PTSD-induced catatonic seizure at the sound of firing weapons. Snipers poised on rooftops, snatching random protesters and placing them in unmarked vehicles before the sudden cutoff of blankness, the prison guard. He sits in a room and monitors the broadcast, instilling the sound of gibberish over the image of staticky waves on the screen. Californians wallow in hottest temps of history. 1 week later, 6 fires blazing with Oregon in tow. Red hot flames, talks of antivirus corona shots. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we on the air?
We are on the air, yes.
Great. So this piece is going to be released also at the end of April, at the same time when your book, Akashic Diaries, is going to be published by Aquarius Press. And I think it's going to be released online first on the Bandcamp of indie label called Transonic, which is a label we produce with transcultures for alternative sound arts and sound creation, and also sound poetry. And we have a division in this label called Sonopoetics, which is more for sound poetry, link with sound art and sound creation. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to be also an album, physical album with...
it's getting hard to hear you. I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was saying that this piece is going to be released in a future album, first online on the Bandcamp of our indie label called Transonic, an indie label for sound art and sound poetry. And we have a division in this label called Sonopoetics, dedicated to sound poetry and in link with sound art and alternative forms of sound creations. And this is going to be also a physical album in the near future with the text excerpts extracted from the book Akashic Diaries to be released by Aquarius Press, and some fragments that you chose and I chose to work together on this album.
Okay, and yes, and you were actually going to be coming to Detroit, and we were supposed to be having an event here, but of course it was canceled because of the coronavirus. But how would you envision an event in Detroit in the future?
Well, we have to do something in Detroit because, of course, first Aquarius Press is based in Detroit, we're based in Michigan and working in Detroit too. And I've never seen Detroit, which is the hometown of soul music and Iggy Pop and techno in the 90s. So it has to be seen.
Yes. And maybe also we could maybe we could have a the festival City Sonic. We could maybe have a version of it in Detroit where people can frequent interesting public spaces where sound installations are set up with artists from different countries, and that would be really
Sure.
interesting.
Because really the purpose of City Sonic is not only to promote sound artists, but really to reveal different aspects of the urban space of the city, which is hosted the festival. And it's not like what I call the big mushroom. We are so used now to big events, even media, musical events, and performing arts event, whatever, in a city, and it's lasting like one evening. It costs a lot of money, and then nothing before and nothing after that is happening.
Yes.
So that's exactly the opposite of our approach. We want to work with the participants, with the local artists, not only the international artists that we bring to the city, but to make some exchange, and also with the inhabitants in a more collaborative way, not only in a playful, interactive, superficial way. And City Sonic, I think, with sound is a marvelous way to reveal not only the history, sometimes the hidden histories, the Akashic aspect somehow, as we put it before, of the city, and also the utopian, the concrete utopia of this city. It's like a new geography, which is a psychogeography, as the French situationists would say. And for me, I'm very attached to this philosophical aspect, and as the famous Guy Debord, the French philosopher, leader of the situation, he said in French, and that's on my T-shirt now, but you cannot see me, unfortunately. Well, so what is written on my T-shirt, which I made myself, is in French: Nous ne voulons plus travailler au spectacle de la fin du monde, mais à la fin du monde du spectacle. Meaning in English, we no longer want to work on the show at the end of the world, but at the end of the show world. You see? So this monde du spectacle world is really everywhere, everywhere. And of course, it suits the people who are in power, because they can manipulate that. So our approach
is the consumer
really
commodity,
top to bottom, because this top to bottom approach can seem also very shallow marketing way to present it, as it is most of the time in all techno capitalist discourse or speech, which I don't like. But the real, for me, bottom to top is working first with the history, with the poetry of the local people, and linking them with other international artist projects or approaches, and not to erase the differences, but make the differences working together to have not only 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 3. So this is the enriching
Absolutely.
supplement that we look for.
Yeah. Okay. We are on WJZZ, Cool TV, and you can always see us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope. And you are welcome to subscribe, like, share, and comment. We're trying to get Philippe Frank and Transculture's Foundation for Digital and Sound Arts to work with us so that we could put in a City Sonic festival in Detroit, where in public spaces we could have an interactive situation between the public and the actual sound installations as a kind of a new way of unfolding an event where the people would feel good. Yeah, relationship, and to create a new history, a psycho architecture, a psycho history, rather than the media journalistic one. And so if anybody's out there and wants to help us do that, we are looking for anyone who wants to spark up the finance for this project. Just let us know. I'm putting that out there because there might be one person who gets it and who'd want to do it.
Some artists and some projects in their locations. It can, because we work with various kind of locations. We can work in a museum, outside of a museum, outside of a gallery, not in the real, not in the market art. But we can also, we have also shown creations in sex shops, in abandoned parks,
in
abandoned factories, and
abandoned factories.
To renew some locations with the projects, with the site-specific sound.
Yeah. So I from what I saw also from the program, which I did get to edit and a little bit and translate. There are the sites are, some of them are historical sites like patrimonial territory. Other ones are museums, and the usual museums and galleries, etc. And then some very remote places, abandoned places where the beauty is in the ugliness and in the abandonment. We've got to
link different aspect of. As you say, that there's also some kind of beauty in an abandoned location.
Yeah.
And for me, the most important is how the project, the site-specific projects of the artist can transform the location, the urban space.
Okay. Excellent, Philippe. We've got to stop now. So we want to transform the space through the artist's influence. And I want to invite you to be with us a second time and to develop a project with you for this live stream with Transcultures and Pépinière de Création. So I hope that you will accept that invitation and that we can set a time for that. And I thank you so much for being with us. It was a great pleasure.
Great pleasure for me.
Thank you. Adios.
Thank you. I hope to see you.
Yes, we will, definitely.
Maybe in the next show.
Okay.
There are many things to share again.
Okay, we will do it, definitely. Thank you so much, and we'll book that. Thank you so much.
Good lightful vibrations from old Europe to New America.
Thank you.